Hello, and welcome to Manufacturer's Corner. I am Roy Paulson, President and CEO of Paulson Manufacturing, and I'm your host for this segment. Thank you for joining us today. On this edition, we're going to discuss financing for businesses interested in the export markets, and I have two great guests to provide their expertise and perspectives on this subject. Ms. Sandra Donzella, Regional Director of the Export-Import Bank of the U.S. Western Region. The Export-Import Bank of the United States, also called EXIM Bank, is the official export credit agency of the United States. Its Export-Import Bank's mission is to assist in financing the export of U.S. goods and services to the international markets. Also joining me is Ms. Kusum Kavya, Executive Vice President and COO of Combustion Associates, Inc. CAI offers a wide array of packaged combustion and gas turbine power generation systems for its clients to enhance their commercial competitiveness and add value to their products. Sandra, welcome.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
And I'm so excited to be able to discuss your products that you have available for finance for the manufacturers who are able to export their products to foreign countries and utilize them. Tell me a little bit about how you are working with manufacturers and just how the state of events are associated with the exporting.
Okay, well, we recognize that often the foreign risk of non-payment or lack of financing, either in the part of a manufacturing company or could be on the part of their international clients, can be an impediment to export growth. So our agency, we offer a series of financial solutions to help companies like Combustion Associates and other manufacturers compete abroad, win more business, turn export opportunities into real sales. To give you an idea, last year, EXIM Bank, we did $16.6 billion in authorizations for the manufacturing sector. And we view it as a critical sector of our economy. And the opportunities that international markets represent are huge. So the main message that our agency likes to give is to use EXIM Bank to tap into the resources that we offer to help you compete, win business internationally while making sure you get paid.
So Sandra, when a customer has already received an order and he has the order on his books, but he hasn't thought about financing, is that too late to come to you, or are you able to have a quick response for them?
No, it's not too late. In fact, we have the ideal solution for that situation. We offer a program called the Export Working Capital Guarantee Program, which has been specifically designed to assist small and mid-sized companies that have an order and have the potential to grow their export but need additional financing to do so. And under that program, over 90% of the activity that our agency does involves transactions that are actually underwritten by our bank partners, financial institutions that have the ability to commit or guarantee on their own without the borrower, the manufacturing company, for instance, being subject to two separate financing approvals. So the borrower, the exporter, if they need financing, if they're working with one of our partner lenders, can just rely on the internal turnaround time of that bank. And our agency will be notified after the fact. And we do that up to certain limits. Typically, what I see, it would be maybe a 4-week turnaround time.
Okay, so that sounds like more or less that you're just making a guarantee to my own bank that I'm already using. Does that sound, did I paraphrase that correctly?
That's exactly right. Under the Working Capital Guarantee Program, our role is that of a guarantor. So in other words, we're co-signing on behalf of the manufacturing company to facilitate their ability to get financing from their bank. But in some cases, however, it could be that maybe you're a small business and you're banking with perhaps a community lender that may not necessarily participate in our programs. And if that's the case, then we would either work with that new lender to introduce them to our products and encourage them to use our loan guarantee to provide the financing that their client needs. And in the event they're not willing to do that, then we also have the ability to provide a direct loan to the company. We only do that for small businesses and for amounts of up to $500,000, and that would be under the Global Credit Express program.
Do you use the same rating of what a small business is as the SBA uses?
Yes.
So, okay, so we're familiar with that. With that. And we have Kasum here, and she has certainly a lot of experience in working with the XM Bank. Kasum, if you don't mind, would you please explain how you got involved with the XM Bank? Why did you need to go see them? And how did that situation develop?
Absolutely, Roy. As you know, we are a manufacturing company in Corona, and we knew as first-generation immigrants to this country that 98% of our customers are outside the United States. What we manufacture are power generation systems that are used predominantly outside the United States. What you and I take for granted every time we flip a switch and we get electricity is not the same around the world. So our story and our history with Export-Import Bank and Sandra goes back 7 years. We came across an opportunity through the U.S. Department of Commerce. They had sent an email saying that there was a bid out there for power generation systems in West Africa. A small country by the name of Benin was looking for a 40 megawatt power plant. At that time, we were actually manufacturing these 10 megawatt units, and we thought, what a great idea to be able to present our offering, our product line to this government. It was a government contract and a government RFQ. Well, the first thing that they wanted was a letter of interest. And we knew by looking at the numbers of this project that it was going to quickly add up in the millions. And as we approached our bank at the time, which was Bank of America, they mentioned to us that there is an Export-Import Bank and that they would be able to assist small businesses like ourselves. I went to the Export-Import Bank website, looked at the portal. There was something called a letter of interest that I could fill in an application, and very quickly I would get something back from the U.S. Export-Import Bank that said, A, are they willing to look at this, and B, would there be any further help from the government to us to finance this project? And as we went through that whole procurement process, we realized that this letter of interest that we got from the U.S. Export-Import Bank was really our step into that arena with these large contracts. And it helped us get our foot in the doorway, and it made our customer look at us much more favorably because we had the U.S. government behind us in this project.
Oh, so you actually used it as a sales tool?
Absolutely. I used it as a sales tool, and then later on realized, as Sandra just mentioned, that the Export-Import Bank was there to facilitate and provide the guarantee for the funds. As a small business, it's really important that we get that money on time in order to produce what we produce, to pay our employees, to meet payroll and certain obligations that we have. So Export-Import Bank was able to provide us with that guarantee later on through Citibank, and we had a letter of credit in place that made sure that we got our payments on time.
Mm-hmm. What is the American content requirement, and what is this rule about American flag vessels? I'll cover both of those in one time here.
Sure. Well, because XM Bank's mission, the main reason why we exist, is really to support American jobs. So therefore, we're bound by U.S. content requirements. We require that in order for XM Bank to provide support, the product be manufactured here in the U.S. and have at least a 51% U.S. content. And we measure U.S. content at cost, the cost of getting the product ready to be exported. At least 50% has to be cost incurred in the U.S. in terms of components built here or parts. U.S. labor often brings that up quite a bit. So that's the criteria.
Am I able to include my overhead in that calculation, or is it only the direct cost?
For small businesses, it's both direct and indirect costs. So
Okay,
yes.
so we have both. Okay.
And in terms of the U.S. flag shipping requirement, that applies for long-term transactions, typically of over $20 million.
Okay, so I don't have to be concerned on that if I have a $100,000 shipment that's going to be going on a container out of Los Angeles. It's not a concern.
No, it's only for loan guarantees over $20 million or for any direct loan that we do to an international buyer, irrespective of the amount of that direct loan. But usually direct loans, when it comes to financing buyers abroad, involve larger transactions, often government buyers, typically over $5 million.
I see.
So these considerations in terms of the U.S. flag shipping vessel has to be more on larger deals.
Sandra, what are most of the transactions that you are doing?
Most of the transactions that Ex-Im Bank does in a given year consistently for the last 5 years has been direct support for small businesses. About 90% of our volume of number of transactions that we did last year were transactions involving applications from small businesses, small ticket items, from beauty care products to medical test kits, things that are not worth perhaps, over $20 million, where you would have to be concerned with whether or not it's going in a U.S. shipping vessel.
And do you aggregate the customers? For example, I ship a lot to Brazil, and I'm making safety equipment that I have regular monthly shipments that go to Brazil. Now, I have multiple customers. Would you aggregate all my customers in Brazil on a loan guarantee, or would you just have one customer that I would work with in Brazil that you would provide the loan guarantee?
Well, it would depend on, my question would be, who needs the financing? When a company approaches us, that's the first question we normally will ask is, do you as Paulson Manufacturing, do you need the financing to fulfill multiple orders from buyers worldwide? And if that's the case, then the Working Capital Guarantee Program would be the program that we will focus on. And yes, there you can use the loan to finance orders from multiple buyers, whether they're all in one country or it could be worldwide. As soon as we're open for support in that country, we have a solution for that. In some cases, however, say you're exporting equipment, like Kusum, and her buyer is in another country, like an emerging market, where access to a 5-year loan is very difficult to obtain. If in some cases it's not even available. So if the buyer needs medium-term financing, and we classify medium-term as transactions under 10 million, and typically with a repayment term of 5 years. If the buyer needs the financing on an equipment sale, then those are transactional. There we will work, we will assess that buyer, and our focus will be on their ability to repay the loan that we will be guaranteeing. And under that program, our guarantee is 100%.
So that's the way that you took your financing, is that the Ex-Im Bank actually financed, I'm assuming, your customer.
Well, if I may clarify that. Back then, for the Benin transaction, Kusum needed a letter of credit, and that letter of credit needed to be confirmed by her bank here. And their bank was not comfortable, likely because the transaction was too large. The exposure was very sizable, so their bank they were not willing to provide the confirmation on that letter of credit. So they applied to Ex-Im Bank to obtain insurance coverage on the letter of credit.
I see.
And with the insurance in place, then her bank felt more comfortable in stepping in and say, yes, we're willing to provide the confirmation, and the transaction moved forward.
I'm glad you mentioned letters of credit, because letters of credit, while they're used in exporting, are not as common as they used to be.
Sure.
But for those of us that have to use them, and I've had many letters of credit that I've had to work through over the years, I always like to give people advice on it of saying, have your letter of credit reviewed by an expert.
Yeah, and that's where a good relationship with your banker can come in very handy. Also, what I would mention to companies like yours that deal with letters of credit, or other manufacturing companies like Zoom, especially on maybe not on the multi-million-dollar transactions, but on the lower amounts, when you require a letter of credit, you make it more difficult for your client, your buyer abroad, to buy from you. It makes you uncompetitive, because you may be competing with suppliers in other countries that are perhaps more aggressive in offering your prospect clients abroad attractive credit terms. So consider using Exim Bank's Export Credit Insurance program. That, in fact, is one of our most popular products and highly utilized by small businesses. And it's a nice substitute to expensive letters of credit for maybe in the cost, for a fraction of the cost. Usually we'll charge about half of 1%, more or less, depending on which insurance policy is being pursued. And there, what we're offering is insurance coverage. So it's not really a loan, but we are covering 90 or 95% of the invoiced amount. So we are considerably minimizing your risk. Why? Because we want you to compete, win business abroad, grow your exports, and hire more people.
Yes, that is the goal. We want to compete, and we want to take advantage of the opportunities that are there. Kasum, as you had mentioned about this opportunity, the way that it had come up is that you had received an email from the U.S. Commercial Service that said there was an opportunity. Just this week, I'd received a similar email. U.S. Commercial Service was looking for someone who could manufacture water filtration sets. And so I just happen to know a lot of businesses, because I'm always active in the business community. And I was able to move that opportunity over to a local business that made exactly that type of equipment. And it was also a large quantity. So I need to get you that reference so that you can see if he wants to be financed.
That would be great.
It's a very large order for use in the Middle East. So these opportunities come up, and we have to be aware of it and pay attention to them.
And I should, if I may add something too, the resources that are offered by the U.S. Department of Commerce are tremendous. And most manufacturing companies, more companies, whether it's manufacturing or even wholesalers too, may not necessarily know about them as well. I receive a lot of leads from Commerce Department, and the main job is to help companies in the U.S. export, find buyers abroad. They can do background checks on potential customers, some market research, and both of our organizations, even though we are independent federal agencies, we both share the same mission. They tackle it more from a marketing standpoint, helping companies find buyers. And once the buyer's found, the negotiation process begins, and if financing comes up, that's when you want to think about Exim Bank.
Super. May I ask, when you had this information came in, and then you had made your application, and then you started working with the customer, did you have to go to Benin to be able to develop this relationship and make the deal? Would it require you to travel?
Absolutely. I think that any time that you have a face-to-face meeting with a customer, it's cementing that relationship. And in every transaction that I know of, it's always been, we know them, we know their character, we know the management team behind this company. And so a face-to-face meeting, traveling overseas, is one of those criteria. As we expand our business, I think Roy, you've really hit on a word there that is very close and dear to my heart, which is opportunity. What U.S. Export-Import Bank and the U.S. Commercial Services does for small business is they create opportunities for us to succeed in a level playing field. For example, 7 years ago, we got this multi-million-dollar contract to provide a full EPC project in the other side of the world, sub-Saharan Africa, 80-megawatt power plant. Well, today, some of the outcomes of making that project, executing it, as we all know in the manufacturing cycle, we do something called the PDCA, right? Plan, do, check, and act. And as we've gone through that circle of growth, we've come back to our client and we've said, Mr. Client, now that you're going to be managing this power plant, you're going to need spare parts. Here's a way for you to, tap into us and we'll be able to provide that to you. But then going forward, we've also trained individuals on how to manage that power plant, creating local jobs here in the United States and creating local jobs there in the country that we're in. And finally, today, we are enjoying the fruits of all those opportunities by having a service contract in place. We're providing operations and maintenance on that power plant. And one thing is that outside the United States, when we give a product or service, it is held at the highest regard. Why? Because it comes with made in the USA. And I think that in itself is a sales tool for manufacturers to expand on. If they can put a label that says made in California, made in the USA, already you are up the flagpole as far as they know that your product is going to meet the quality standards, that you are going to be able to provide them a product that is going to last a long time and be there for the servicing of that product.
That's wonderful. I know that I consider it a trademark, made in USA.
Absolutely.
And it's the best trademark in the world.
Yeah,
Yes, it
the
is.
brand sells itself.
And in the case of Benin, as you've been back and forth and working with them, and you have these long-term relationships, now this becomes a touchstone for other customers. So you can say, hey, we did this project, and is that now leading to other opportunities for you?
Yes, in fact, Sandra was just at our facility recently. We have sold 2 units to Nigeria, neighboring country to Benin. And the reason why we were able to be successful in Nigeria is, again, it goes back to Benin. It's within 3 hours they were able to come and visit the power plant, know for sure that we had the capabilities, the know-how, and to execute projects. Because it's one thing getting a contract and saying, yes, you can do it, but it's another thing actually on the ground, locally being able to produce this product that is now providing electricity on the national grid to thousands of homes and community. So we've had opportunities now that our sales contracts in Nigeria. We also have 6 units that we are manufacturing currently for Cameroon. Cameroon is another oil-producing country. It has a big need for products and services, and they came to us through an entity in Houston. So this is how, networking, sometimes you think when you're attending conferences and networking events, for example, the Exim Bank puts on these global access forums. They're fantastic opportunities to meet other exporters. Because what happens, just like you said, you know somebody else now that does this water filtration system, and you're able to pass that opportunity. Likewise, what I've noticed at these global forum events or exporting events is that I come in touch with somebody else that says, I have a power generation need, and I'm going to put you in touch with them. And then suddenly it developed into another opportunity that now is bearing fruit.
I notice that when I go to events that are centered around exporting, the people are generally very helpful this way. They will, if they know of something, they'll talk about it, or if they know of a hint of a way to make some kind of a, not to get around, but how to organize on the tariffs so that the tariff ratings and schedules are correct, they're happy to tell you and explain it. It's a very giving group as I've met them around the country. And I've certainly seen very large pieces of business occur because of these networking meetings. Now, Sandra, in your case, there's really a competitor from SBA. You have the XM opportunities and you have the SBA.
Correct.
So how do these two different organizations work together to work with the customers, and then how do they fall one way or the other? Because they're somewhat competing plans.
I see what you're saying, but we don't really view SBA as a competitor. We view them as another partner, and in fact, we often refer business to our friends at the SBA. For instance, the main difference is that SBA's maximum guarantee, I think, is limited to $5 million. So, for instance, if Kusum is working on a transaction and she has a borrowing need of $7 million to fulfill a large contract and it's in need of working capital, she has outgrown the SBA. The only solution for her would be a working capital guarantee offered by XM Bank. So that's one of the differences between the SBA. If I meet with a company, a small business, one of the things that I ask is, who do you bank with? And if they bank with a lender that prefers the SBA, I encourage that company to stay with their lender. And if it's an export financing need that they have, I make sure that that lender knows about the export financing solutions from the SBA. They offer 3 as well. And there's some differences in between them and XM Bank, but the intent is really to make sure that the company gets the financing that they need, whether it's from the SBA or XM Bank. Their lender really makes that decision. Some lenders prefer SBA because they're just used to it, especially the community-sized lenders, while other banks may have a preference for XM Bank, especially if they're looking for this more sizable transactions that exceed maybe the $5 million limitation from the SBA. SBA, though, does have more flexibility with U.S. content, whereas we don't. And there's some other items, policy issues that XM Bank has to address. For instance, our charter prohibits us from getting involved in any transactions involving military buyers. The SBA does not have that limitation. So there's instances where they're really the better solution than XM Bank. But many of these companies, small businesses that need financing, even if they're working with an SBA loan guarantee in place, if they are extending credit, SBA requires them to obtain export credit insurance on their foreign receivable. And that's where XM Bank can come in. So we work together. I also receive referrals from the SBA, primarily from their clients seeking insurance coverage on their exports.
So as we're seeing both from both myself and from Kusum, XM Bank has not only are they providing products for large business, but for small, and a variety of products tailored on your needs. Do you have people coming in that they like start on one program, but then they develop into other programs over time as they change, their business changes? Mm-hmm. Or do they pretty much just stay with one program?
It varies, but yes, we have multiple clients that may come to us perhaps with a request for an insurance policy. The insurance tends to be the initial, their more immediate need, because it could be that they've already been exporting for a few years, and now their buyers abroad are compelling them to extend credit. From the buyer's perspective, they're saying, okay, we've proven ourselves to you. How about now transition us from prepayment to open account terms, or at least meet us halfway. We'll give you 50% down,
yes,
but instead of the balance prior to shipment, they're saying, give me 30 or 60 days. So those are the insurance is the ideal solution to address that need. And once an insurance policy is in place, often it triggers export growth. And I have clients. I have a client in San Diego I met with a few weeks ago. I met with them initially back in 2008. And that company at that time was had about 15% of their total revenue represented exports. Right now, it's about 40%.
That's big growth.
Big growth. And that could trigger a need for working capital to sustain that growth. So many companies pursue insurance, they may transition to working capital. In some cases, a manufacturing company may need both. Or in some cases, it could be a company needs working capital to fulfill a large order from abroad, and their buyer needs financing as well. So those will be two separate applications, two separate programs, one addressing the financing needs of the U.S. exporter, and another transaction addressing the financing needs of their buyer. But they can work, they complement each other.
I see. I know that, in my own circumstance, it's capital intensive. And I have to buy equipment, and I have to have space, and I have to buy a lot of raw materials. And basically, I have all my expenditures done long before I ship. And then I'm going to ship this order. So with having working capital, that would help me get through these capital-intensive phases associated with the orders.
Correct.
And I can see how that would work very well for us
Right.
in our particular circumstance. Kasum, as you are seeing your markets expand and you're utilizing these tools, which would be the financing, you're utilizing the tools of U.S. commercial service and so forth, do you see that your business will continue to expand, and are you bringing on more employees because of that?
Actually, we are. We see tremendous opportunities in sub-Saharan Africa. There's a reason why our project is there, and we're really concentrating on that region. It's an emerging market for us. We see us growing here in Riverside County. It's really very beneficial for us because our supply chain is within a 50-mile radius, which is wonderful to have. The 91 freeway, 15, these are corridors to take our product to Houston or to Long Beach. And having a very close-knit supply chain, like you mentioned, capital-intensive products is what we're building too. I think one of the benefits of working capital line of credit is also this feature called bid bonds. As we look at opportunities, and most of these international opportunities, as you're putting in your proposal, they want what's considered a bid bond to go with that. Well, the Export-Import Bank provides a tool that you do not have to tie up your capital, 3 to 4% of whatever that proposal price is. You're able to actually get a bid bond to submit without raising that capital or putting it away. So these are the other benefits of the working capital line of credit that I've seen at U.S. Export-Import Bank. Performance bonds, warranty guarantees, all of this will, if it wasn't for the U.S. Export-Import Bank, we would have to tie up that cash. And so this, because the line of credit is in place, we're able to utilize that, free up our credit to go after much other larger opportunities. And really, we see ourselves growing. We want to hire locally. We also want to be able to produce locally as well. So our steel, our electrical, valves, instrumentation, everything else, we always try to strive to get it locally here.
Sandra, what about indirect exports? Because so many people are manufacturing components or pieces that go into a larger assembly.
Yes.
Is there financing available for companies that are doing indirect exports?
Yes, our working capital guarantee program can support indirect exports as well. So can our Global Credit Express direct loan program for small businesses that need up to $500,000. So for instance, if you receive an order from the actual exporting company, you're shipping it abroad, or it could be that you're shipping it to them and your product may be incorporated into a bigger product, Exim Bank can support those. Absolutely.
I know that for my own business, I had done some research on these indirect exports, and my indirect exports are larger than my direct exports.
Is that right? Interesting.
Yes, it's 35% of my business is indirect exports, and 25% is directly exported by myself. And the only way I was able to find this out was by going face to face with my customers, sitting down with them, getting comfortable that, with the questions I was asking, and I was surprised at what a large number of my product, or quantity of my product, is re-exported out of the country, where I thought it was being used here domestically. So I think a lot of people who are watching this show would be saying, well, I don't really know how much my products are re-exported. Well, the only way you're going to find out is by asking. And of course, you have to have a good relationship to be able to ask those hard questions. Kasum, as someone who's using XM Bank, would you encourage others to do this as a method of growth? I mean, you've got so much experience in this. Is that a direction that you would ask that other exporters were aiming themselves?
Absolutely. I think the U.S. Export-Import Bank and the programs that they offer it's a tool. And for us, we've looked into that, and we've scratched away and looked at what other things are available to us. And it's really helped us get to understand what's out there, what can we do to make ourselves look bigger in front of our customers, that are the overseas customers, and to be able to get that recognition. I think that one of the things you'll see on our websites are our awards. We are a very small company, but because of doing international projects, exporting, we've been able to be tapped into the U.S. Commercial Services, the U.S. Export-Import Bank. And last year, we got a shout out from the U.S. President because we were exporting our products overseas.
That's wonderful. That's a great story. And I wish that one day I would get something like that would happen. So anyway, in this circumstance that we discussed, we see the opportunities. We know that we have to have personal relationships with our customers. You have to know your customer. We know that we have multiple financing options for our orders. And it really comes down to good relationships with the customers, good relationships with your local bank, good relationships with your XM Bank representative or SBA, if that's the direction you decide to go. And in these relationship selling method, I always like to say to people that here in the United States, it's 25% of our sales efforts are relationship, and 75% is transactional, the price, quality, and delivery. But in international business, it's exactly reversed. It's 75% is the relationship,
True.
and 25% is this transactional aspect. So if there's a real takeaway from this show, is that work to develop those relationships at home and abroad, determine what are your available options so that when you capture these large orders or any orders, that you're able to then know how you can work with it. And then a shout out also to the U.S. Commercial Service. The U.S. Commercial Service is there to help these exporters, because I think that there is a requirement with XM Bank that they need to be already a company that is exporting. Isn't that correct?
Yes, our criteria really varies by program, but generally across the board, we look for companies that have an established history, ideally of at least 3 years in business, revenue producing history, and exporting US-made products. They already have to have some exporting experience. On a couple of programs, we prefer that they have at least 1 year exporting experience, because we're also taking the performance risk of the exporter. And they have to have those buyers and be negotiating sales, because when a company calls me and they have no buyers yet, then they're really not ready for XM Bank. There has to be an export sale that we're asking to support.
Right. So for them, and continuously, U.S. Commercial Service is a very good contact for them to guide them through these different processes.
Right, to find buyers.
To find also.
And
Go
then
ahead.
if I may, please, Roy, you mentioned relationships, you mentioned how these tools are available to small businesses. And I think that as a manufacturer, we're really growing the economy, because when a manufactured product goes out of the United States, other suppliers that have contributed to that product also benefit.
Absolutely.
So I would say that as manufacturers, we're also in this position, or we have a responsibility to grow jobs in the United States.
For sure. And both you and myself, we are doing that.
Yes.
And I really look forward to every order that I can ship for exporting, because I know it really helps the country.
Absolutely.
Sandra, thank you for coming today.
Thank
and
you.
for all of your advice. And I hope that we can work together again in the future. And we have more opportunities to discuss the programs at XM Bank and how they were utilized.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me here today.
And Kasum, thank you for taking the time to come here today. I know you're very busy, and but during this time, I think that you brought a lot of great messages to the listeners, that they can see how that the XM Bank services really do affect and improve and grow a manufacturing business such as your own.
I really appreciate the opportunity to have this talk with you, Roy, and Manufacturer's Corner. I've learned something new here today, and it's lifelong learning and it's continual improvement, so I really appreciate this opportunity.
Oh, thank you so much. That's it for this edition of Manufacturer's Corner. Thanks again to my guests, Sandra Donzella, Regional Director of Export-Import Bank of the United States, Western Region, and Kasum Kavya, Executive Vice President and COO of Combustion Associates, Inc. If you are a manufacturer, policymaker, or educator, and you would like to take part in our discussions as a guest or member of a future panel discussion, please complete our contact form at manufacturerscorner.com, or you can call us at 951-697-3098. Manufacturer's Corner also welcomes advertisers. So if you like what we do here and you'd like to sponsor our programs, we'd be happy to talk to you about this as well. Again, just visit the contact page at manufacturerscorner.com or call 951-697-3098. We'll add you to our mailing list and provide you with all the information you need. For Manufacturer's Corner, I'm Roy Paulson. Thank you for watching.